Summer 2026 is here, which means that the World Cup is happening. And unless you've been living under a rock, like my good friend Patrick Starr, or just have not been on social media, a hot button issue right now concerns the Argentina national team. And as most of you know that tune into this show, I'm Black and Argentinian, so I feel I just wanted to take the time to address the issue at hand. And I'm not going to focus on the soccer side of things. I'm focusing on the cultural side of things. So let's get into it. Can an entire country be racist? I don't know. But I do think we're asking the wrong question here. Because over the past week or so, I've watched millions of people confidently describe an entire nation. And honestly, the more I thought about it, the more I realized this conversation isn't really about Argentina. It's about us. It's about how quickly we form opinions, how easily we generalize, and how difficult it is to separate history from the people that are living in the present. Today, we're going to have one of the most important conversations I've ever had here on Middle of the Fence. And this is not to tell you what to think or anything like that, but hopefully to give you something worth really thinking about. So, welcome back to another episode of Middle of the Fence here. And if this is your first time here, welcome. Like I mentioned, my name is Andre Spruell. And on this podcast, we don't try to tell people what side of the fence that they should stand on at all. What we do is we try to understand why people are standing where they are in the first place. And today, we're talking about something that's been impossible to ignore. Because during the 2026 World Cup, Argentina has become one of the biggest stories in the tournament. Some of it is because of their football. Others because of controversy. So one incident was a video involving famous streamer IShowSpeed with accusations of racist behavior towards him. Social media exploding, and before long, one sentence started appearing everywhere. And that sentence is, Argentina is racist. And that's where I paused, because I'm Black. I'm also Argentinian. So this conversation hits differently. And before I could even begin forming an opinion, I asked myself something. Am I reaching emotionally, or am I actually trying to understand what's happening here? That's what this episode is all about. Now, let me also make something very clear before we go any further into this special. Because if you're watching this hoping I prove Argentina is innocent, sorry to burst your bubble, but you're probably going to be disappointed. And if you're watching this hoping I prove Argentina is uniquely racist, guess what? You're probably going to be disappointed too. Because that's not my goal with this. My goal is to ask a better question. And that question is it fair to judge millions of people based off the actions of some? And if the answer is yes, then we are willing to apply that same standard to every other country, including our own. So let's start with why we're even having this conversation. And again, I want to be clear. If someone experiences racism, it deserves to be taken seriously. It should never be excused. It should never be minimized. And it should never be laughed off as just part of sports, because wrong is wrong. Aside from this just being a hot button issue, There was a post on the social media site Threads, and if you're a content creator and you're not on Threads, I highly recommend it because it's a very great way to tap in with people and actually have meaningful conversations that you may not get across other social media, just sites or companies. And Threads, if you're watching this, holler at your boy. But all jokes aside, I want to read this one post that really got the wheels turning to want to even record this special. And I'll put it up here for anyone watching. So the post says, I won't sugarcoat it. I fell into that mindset too about Argentina. When I started learning more about Argentina's history and seeing some of the recent incidents, especially the speed incident, talking about the streamer IShowSpeed, it generally changed how I looked at the country. As a black man, that hurt. But then I had to check myself. If we're going to judge every Argentinian because of history or the actions of some people, where does it stop? England, the USA, France, Spain, Portugal, Belgium. And I just felt that this was a great post and just spoke to me directly because the incident taking place involves both of my ethnicities that I grew up with and equally admired most of my life, all of my life, not most of my life, all of my life. And that's being black and Argentinian. So Argentina being labeled as a racist country while also being a black man that grew up in the United States, it just felt like society or social media like pressuring me to like pick a side kind of thing. And I frankly don't think that that's right at all. And I think it really is the best way to look at it from an objective perspective. Because again, now labeling a whole country as racist, is that the right thing to do? I don't think that it should be, because I'm not going to act like there aren't racist people in Argentina, just like there aren't racist people in countries throughout the world, but it's like the same type of logic and argument has been used for other groups. It really is a tough situation, but looking at it from an objective perspective is definitely the best way to go with it. One of my favorite things about psychology is that it often explains why good people can unintentionally make unfair conclusions. And there are a few psychological concepts I want to introduce. But don't worry, this isn't a college lecture, I promise. The first is confirmation bias, which has been mentioned multiple times on this program. And in simple terms, we naturally pay more attention to information that supports what we already believe. So if someone already believes Argentina is racist, every new video, every new headline, every controversial moment feels like more proof. On the other hand, if someone loves Argentina, they may ignore those same incidents because they don't fit the image that they already have. The truth requires us to challenge both tendencies, though. And the second psychological concept is called the availability heuristic. Basically, the easier something is to remember, the more common we assume it is. Viral videos are memorable. Outrage spreads quickly. Algorithms reward emotion. So suddenly, one clip begins to represent an entire nation. Not because it's statistically representative, but because it's emotionally unforgettable. Then there's something called the outgroup homogeneity effect. Sounds kind of complicated, but it's actually something we've all done. We recognize how different the people inside our own group are. We know our friends aren't all the same. Our families aren't all the same. Our neighbors aren't all the same. But when it comes to another group, it's much easier to think they're all like that. And that's where stereotypes begin. Finally, one of my favorite psychological ideas, the contact hypothesis. It suggests that meaningful interaction with people from different backgrounds can reduce prejudice. So, in other words, when people become human, stereotypes begin to fall apart. And that's one of the primary reasons why I started the Middle of the Fence podcast. Because conversation has a way of accomplishing what arguments rarely can. Embracing cultures is something that is very important when it comes to this stuff. Because when it comes to labeling millions of people from a country or assigning stereotypes to a whole nation or large group of people is simply just not right. And one thing that I am grateful for my current role working in the construction field is that I get to interact with people from all walks of life, truly. And not like, oh, because my grandfather came here from this country or anything like that. No, it's a lot of people that have directly come here from a different country or that grew up most of their lives or all of their lives in the US. So it's interacting with people from Guatemala, interacting with people from Brazil, people that come from European-based countries like Poland or Greece, and just really embracing other people's cultures through that. And it's such a beautiful thing. And you got to see that during this World Cup, So however you may feel about what's rigged and what's not, what team's going to win, whatever you think about the football side of things, one of the best things that have come about is seeing all the tourists that have come to the US and just interact with us and having the time of their lives, that it really changed their perspective from the type of media that that they consume or that they see in their country and how it shows us in a negative light. And then they've come here and experienced our culture and have loved it, to the point where our B tier restaurants that we don't think are that good, that they loved, and that's a lighthearted joke with this side of things. But that's the point that I'm getting at, is that judging nation or just a group of people, assigning stereotypes and all that is not the right thing to do. The best thing to do is interact and embrace other cultures. If you have the means to travel to do that, then do that. Or you work with someone or come across someone from a different background, make it a point to try to learn more about their culture, because not only does it allow you to become better educated, it also allows you to show more empathy and not be so quick to stereotype or generalize a group of people or the country that they come from. Before we talk about Argentina's history, before we talk about Afro-Argentines, before we talk about European immigration, before we compare countries, I want to leave you with one question. If history alone determines who people are today, then what country escapes judgment? Because every nation has chapters that are painful. Every nation has stories they'd rather forget. So the real question isn't whether history matters, because it absolutely does. The question is, how should history shape the way we see the people living today? That's where we're headed next, because Argentina's story is far more complicated than what most people realize.